Привет! Today we will talk about common mistakes almost all beginners make when they start learning Russian. Also in this video you will find some of my recommendations which will help to make your progress faster and more effective. So mistake number 1 is learn cursive. Cursive is a very unusual skill, and let's be fair, how often do you actually write in Russian? I think usually people are typing nowadays, and the most information, the most of resources you will find in Russian, such as textbooks, books, even texting with your friends in messengers, all of these texts are going to be typed. Cursive is needed for natives because we write a lot at school, at university, sometimes at work, and we need to do this fast. So cursive helps us to write faster. But for you, cursive is most likely going to be absolutely useless because, as I have already said, most of resources are typed, and I bet you typed more than write as well nowadays. You can learn cursive a little bit later when you realize that you actually need it, that you want to write fast in Russian, or you have a Russian pen pal to whom you write actual letters. In this case, yes, you can learn cursive, but usually beginners are trying to learn cursive right after they have learned the Cyrillic alphabet, and they are already so confused with the alphabet, they still messed up B and V, and they, after this, with desperation in their eyes, with this desperate look, they're trying to learn cursive and they lose their motivation and they give up because they think that Russian is absolutely difficult. You don't really need this cursive, so leave it until you realize that you actually need to write. But actually, it doesn't mean that you don't need to know how to write. Of course you need, and but I think people nowadays are mostly typing, so of course you need to practice writing. But if you know how to type, if you know Russian alphabet, that's already more than enough at your level. Another mistake a lot of beginners do is just Google, for example, all Russian case endings. Write all these tables in your notebook and try to learn it just like this. It's an absolutely bad idea. First of all, you will forget it on the second, let's say, month in best case, but actually even faster, and it won't give you a proper understanding of grammar, and it won't help you to speak in Russian at all. You need to learn grammar in the context, and gradually, if even you start learning cases, you learn cases one by one, not even in their actual order. How Russians, for example, do, you learn them in different order. For example, after nominative, you usually move to prepositional or accusative, it depends. And if even you're learning the case already, you don't learn the whole case at once. You learn how to decline a certain group, for example, singular nouns. After this, you learn how to decline plural nouns. After this, you learn about adjectives, numbers, and all other things. So you need to do this gradually and in the proper context, so you can use this grammar directly and realize when you need to use this grammar. So don't push yourself on grammar too early. Learn grammar gradually, one topic by another, step by step, not all tables at once, because again it will just kill your motivation, kill your understanding of Russian grammar, make you frustrated and upset. And if even you're ready to deal with being desperate, it's absolutely useless. You won't learn grammar by this, you won't speak Russian by this, so this approach is absolutely bad. Please don't do this. Another side of the coin and vital mistake is don't learn grammar at all. Some people think like, oh, I will watch films, I will listen to music, I will listen to native, and by this I will memorize Russian and it will be very simple. No, it won't. You won't learn language like this because Russian language is grammatically extremely heavy language. And as a result of this approach, most likely you will memorize a lot of wrong patterns, and after some time, when you will try speaking Russian, people won't understand you. Like, maybe you will learn some vocabulary by this, of course you will, but you won't understand how to use grammar, and when you will try to speak, people will understand words you're saying, but they won't understand what do you mean. Please don't do this either. Learn grammar step by step. That's the best approach, and learn this in the context. Another mistake is try to find a Russian friend or pen pal and think that he or she will be a brilliant teacher and he or she will tell you everything, and maybe you will even do a language exchange, and by this you will learn Russian. spoiler, most of Russians have no idea how to teach Russian to foreigners. If even, for example, you have found a Russian teacher who teach Russian to Russians, it's absolutely different skill from teaching Russian to foreigners. So please, if even you find a friend, it's an absolutely brilliant idea to find a friend to practice some speaking, to help each other, to share some cultural experience and moments and discuss this, to practice speaking and enjoy that you actually are making progress and noticing this progress with someone else and sharing your emotions about learning language and practice it. It's brilliant. But expect that someone who's not a teacher will teach you properly. It's absolutely a bad idea, because usually when you are a native speaker, you just natively know the language. You don't need an explanation. But when you are a foreigner who's learning this language, you are tabula rasa, you have no idea how this works, you have no logic, you have no understanding, and you need to build the whole system by yourself from zero. So Russian-speaking friends are absolutely great for practicing speaking, for exchanging some cultural moments, and for noticing your progress in a real communication situation, but not for teaching and learning from them. Of course, they can teach you something, but they can't give you a proper system in which you can learn the language confidently and effectively, which is the most important. Another mistake is connected with verbs, and this mistake is for more advanced level, maybe for the end of A1 or the beginning of A2. And this mistake is to learn verbs one in a time. That's a very bad approach, because if even Russian seems easy because we have only 3 tenses like past, future, and present, that's all. We have aspects of verbs. We have perfect and imperfect aspects. So the correct approach to learning verbs in Russian is learn them by couples. For example, читать, почитать, купить, покупать. Perfect and imperfect aspect, because you need to choose the correct aspect, depends on the context, and of course you need to know both forms of one verb. In English, for example, it both will be to read, to buy. In Russian, it's 2 different verbs, and you need to be able to choose the correct aspect, depends on the cases. But if you just learn купить, читать, and you have no idea what's another aspect of the same verb, you won't be able to create the grammatically correct sentence, and most likely you also won't be understood. The next mistake is try to translate some colloquial phrases from your own language literally to Russian, or just do exercises for translating. Translating is considered as not a very modern and effective approach. In most of the modern textbooks, you won't find any exercises for translating, because actually it's kind of useless, because to effectively learn vocabulary, you need to create a connection between words in language you're learning with the object itself, not to the words in your native language. But exercises for translating create the connection between words in your language and words in your native language. It's not very effective. You need to create a connection between word in new language and the object itself. Only by this you will speak confidently and create a big and confident base for active vocabulary, not passive vocabulary. So please try to avoid translating exercises. And speaking of how you learn vocabulary, I recommend you to create some Quizlet cards for yourself, or force yourself to use vocabulary you have just learned, because sometimes students just learn the list of vocabulary and never get back to this vocabulary again. That's a very bad approach. You might memorize it for, let's say, for a month, but after some time you won't recall these words. You can recall something that you have actually used. So when you're learning new vocabulary, try to, for example, let's say create a text with this vocabulary, or you have read a text, you have found some new words in this text, retell to yourself the text you have just read using these new words. Or, for example, make new sentences, make up new sentences with the vocabulary you have just learned. When your brain realizes that you actually need to use this vocabulary, when you actually using it, your brain memorizes it as inactive vocabulary. But when you just memorize it and never use it again, it might be in your passive vocabulary. You'll recognize these words in the reading or listening exercise, but you will never be able to pronounce, to speak using these words. Another mistake is learning new vocabulary without stress mark. Especially as a beginner, please, when you create your Quizlet cards for yourself or write your new words down, please put the stress mark, because stress in Russian is very unpredictable, but you need to memorize it to speak correctly, because sometimes stress changes the whole meaning of the word. And again, if you want to memorize the correct stress, you can be misunderstood. I think that's kind of all recommendations so far, all mistakes I have seen in my practice so far, and I really hope this video was helpful for you. But the last recommendation is hire a tutor. Of course, you can learn language by yourself, but teacher can help you to avoid these mistakes. Also, a teacher can help you to make your progress fun, effective, and fast. So if you would like to learn Russian with me, please let me know in the comment or send me an email by the email address you can find in the description. Thank you for watching and see you later. Пока!